Let's get started with the first episode of the series titled The Three Seers: Sense Organs, Mind and Consciousness. The word seer refers to the subject. You are the subject, while whatever you see are the object. It is also called the scene. So Drugdrishya Viveka, the text we're gonna talk upon, actually means to discriminate the nature of seer, drug, and the scene, that is drishya. Let's get started. In this episode, we're going to discuss from verse number 1 to verse number 5. Verse number 1 actually summarizes verse number 2, 3, 4, and 5. The form is perceived and the I is its perceiver. The I is perceived and the mind is its perceiver. The mind, along with its modification, is perceived and the witness is only the perceiver. But the witness is not perceived by any other. So this is what verse number 1 says. And it hasn't said anything exceptional. Just a common logic. So from this verse, we can describe the fundamental principle. The subject and object are different. The form is perceived and the I is its perceiver. The I here is the subject, while the form, which is also called nature or the universe, is perceived. The object and subject is different. It's common sense, it's logic. You are the seer, the subject, and the video you're watching just right now is the object. You are perceiving, the subject is perceiving this video, the object, right? Similarly, the I is perceived and the mind is its perceiver. The I itself becomes the object of knowledge or the scene with respect to the mind, which is the subject, and the mind itself becomes the object of knowledge to the witness. So the subject and object are different. It is one of the fundamental aspect of subject-object relationship. So the second aspect that we can generate from this verse number 1 is the object are many and the subject is in unity. So I, as the subject, perceives nature. What does it perceive in nature? It perceives various mountains, rivers, books. It observes many things. Many objects are observed by the same mind. You don't have many sense organs that can see, only the eye. And it is the same eye that perceives different objects. So the objects are many and the subject is in unity. The I is perceived and the mind is its perceiver. I is subjected to various kinds of diseases or conditions like blindness, sharpness, or any other things. And the mind is the subject that knows what the I is subjected to change. Thus the mind becomes the subject to the I, that is the object. Similarly, the mind also contains various modifications like your understanding, your beliefs, your memories, and all of this is perceived by the unknown subject called the witness. But this witness is not perceived by any other. It is self-luminous. So this in generally talks about the fundamental principle, that is number 2. Now let's talk about number 3, which is related to number 2. So the object changes while the subject is relatively unchanging. So you can see many objects right here. You can see the various mountains, skies, clouds, blue color, green color, whatever. And they are continuously changing. The clouds, they come up and cover the sky, and the next moment they all disappear and the blue sky is revealed. And all these objects are subjected to change, while you, the subject, witnesses all of these changes. You witness all these changes through the same eye, the same mind, and the same witness consciousness. Just sees the object change and change and change. So, let's go deeper. This is what verse number 1 says. Verse number 2 discusses with the first statement, that is, the form is perceived and the I is its perceiver. Verse number 3 deals with the I is perceived and the mind is its perceiver. Verse number 4 discusses the mind with its modification is perceived and witness is the perceiver. And last but not the least, it will be talked upon how the witness is not subjected to as an object and cannot be perceived as an object by us. So let's get started again. The physical aspect which can be perceived. So the physical aspects are those that can be perceived, which can be perceived through our own physical body and sense organs. And what is perceived? The whole physical universe and the existence of the universe is perceived by our physical organs. So, verse number 2 actually says, the forms are many and varied on account of differences like this: blue, yellow, gross, subtle, short, long. The eye remaining the same sees them all. So, let's apply the fundamental principle that we agreed upon verse number 1. The subject and object are different. Of course, you can see here, you the subject is seeing the object, which is the physical universe, through eye. The object are many and subject is in unity. Various forms of the universe is observed, ranging from the mountains to the rivers to the greeneries to the different colors, but you, the subject, the eye, sees them all. It remains unchanged. Again, the object changes and subject is changing. All of these components of the universe are subjected to change. The forests are deforested. The mountain, the glaciers of the mountain may collapse in a moment. Whatever are subjected to change, the eye remaining unchanging sees them all. This is what verse number 2 says, and it's pretty logical. There's nothing any spiritual or anything about it. It's just a logic. Now let's explain verse number 3, the subtle aspect. So the subtle aspect are those aspects which cannot be perceived by our physical body, but we know they exist. For example, your thoughts, your emotions, your feelings. We cannot see them. Even you cannot see your thoughts. If I cut you open, or if a doctor performs a surgery on you, can they see your thoughts, your feelings, or your emotions? No, they cannot see them. But you know they exist. So they are the subtle aspect which cannot be perceived by your physical sense organs or physical aspects. So right here you see two different images. One consists of your beliefs, your thoughts. It's called the mind. And another is a physical matter. Just take bunch of packed up neurons, which is called the brain. So the brain is the physical manifestation of the mind. For example, let's take an eye example. So how does the eye work actually, scientifically? So the eye doesn't see themselves, nor it sees any of the object that you thought you saw. Eye actually sees just the reflection of those objects. If they are too near you, if the object is too near to your eyes, you can't see them. And if it is too farther away from it, you still can't see them. So what happens actually is the light falls on the object and the reflection is sent to the eye. The light of reflection is converted into electrical impulses and then through optical pathways and neurons taken up by the brain to the mind. Thus, an image is generated in the mind and then it is sent again back to the eye through the brain's pathway, neuronal pathway, and then you say, I see this object. Thus you say, I see. So the brain is just a physical manifestation of the mind. So the brain is a physical matter by which the mind manifests and the mind expresses itself actually through to the physical body and sense organs. So now Let's see what verse number 3 actually have to say. The mind, remaining the same, knows the different characteristics of the eye, such as blindness, number 1. Your eye may be subjected to have different pathological condition like conjunctivitis, the redness of your eye. It is the same mind that sees it all. Your skin may be subjected to change or decay. You may not hear, and people may have to use sign language to talk to you. It is the same mind that sees them all. You can say mind experiences, or the mind is the knower of the senses. The senses itself doesn't know that it is subjected to these various conditions. The mind has to interpret it. The same mind interprets that the eye is subjected, the eye cannot see. The same mind says, I have various conditions of my skin. The same mind says that I am deaf. With respect to the physical universe, yes, the sense organs acted as a unity, but with respect to the mind, it is the same mind. It may be subjected to change, like that of sense organs, but with respect to the mind, the sense organs are different. There are various sense organs that the same mind feels. Thus, the mind is the knower of these senses. This is what verse number 3 has to say. Now let's apply these fundamental principles that we talked about earlier. The subject and object are different. It's very fundamental. It's clear. Your sense organs are the object. They are subjected to change, various different conditions like blindness, sharpness, dullness, diseases, conditions, anything, while the mind as a subject sees them all. And there are many sense organs. Objects are many. Sense organs are many, but the same mind sees them all because the mind is a unity. Witness consciousness. The unknowable yet beyond the known. So it's a bit hard to explain and even maybe harder for you to grasp. So let's start with the modifications of the mind. Verse number 1 talked about the modifications of the mind is witnessed by the witness consciousness. Modifications of the mind is the object of the knowledge to the subject. That is called the witness consciousness. So what are the 5 modifications of the mind? This is according to Patanjali Yoga Sutras. So let's talk about the modifications. Number 1 is correct understanding. Number 2 is wrong understanding. Number 3 is the imaginative power of your mind. Number 4 is sleep. And number 5 is memory. And the mind circulates among these modifications and creates various thoughts, various desires, various patterns, habits, your feelings, your emotions, only based on these 5 emotions which goes around circle and circle and circle. Consciousness remaining the same illumines the thoughts of desire, willingness, doubt, belief, modesty, understanding, fear, and such others. So, let's say you're angry at someone. So, before having an expression either in your face or in your mind, aren't you aware that you're angry? If you're falling in love with someone, aren't you aware that you're falling in love? And if you are aware of falling in love or getting angry at someone, then isn't that anger and love the observed and perceived and object of knowledge to someone that is quite different from the mind itself that illumined the field? Let's try and simplify this logic. That here is an electricity. Right? The electricity, if a power cord is placed into an electrical outlet and turned on, what happens? The light bulb glows and you see everything in the dark. the fan starts spinning and you feel coldness when there's hot. In the television, various objects are displayed and you hear various sounds, which is a form of entertainment. In refrigerator, a certain coldness is there to preserve the food for more days. For air conditioning, air is continuously being generated to stay warm or cold depending on the condition of the environment. So what happens actually is the electricity is more like a ultimate consciousness, while the light that glows in the light bulb is, or the spinning of the fan, or listening and watching the visuals and hearing, they all are the light bulb, the fan, the television, they all are the various modifications of the mind. Maybe it be your desires or memory or your understanding. Even when you go to sleep, they all act as the subtle aspect of the ultimate consciousness. The consciousness, the electricity is the reason they illumine. So again, let's talk about the three fundamental principles. The subject and object are different. Yes, if you are aware of all those feelings of emotions and love and hate and everything that I talked about earlier, when you are aware of your desires, then isn't there's a certain gap between your desires that are the object and some unknown subject which is called the witness? Don't you know that you are having those desires, having that intense moment of love or fear or hatred for someone? Isn't the subject and the object different? Yes. The object are many and the subject is in unity. So brain is subjected to various modifications. We discussed it earlier, right understanding and wrong understanding, and the imaginative power of the mind, and the memory, and your sleep state. There are many modifications of the mind. The objects are subjected to change, right? Your mind changes. The moment you think one thing, your desire changes, your thought pattern changes. Even the physical matter or manifestation of the mind, that is the brain, it is subjected to change. So the three fundamental principles that we talked upon is again established. Example from the electricity. The consciousness is like the electricity, and their thoughts of desires, your willingness are like the light bulbs, the spinning of the fan. The consciousness, the electricity was behind all of that. Similarly, the consciousness is behind your desire, your doubt, your belief, and everything that your mind is modified in. Once you have understand that you are not your body and you are neither your mind, when it is clearly established in yourself, then all the problems in your life are gone. So it may be an unusual statement for you. Why? Where are your problems? Your problems are either in the level of your body or level of your mind. That's it. And if you separate yourself from the misery of the mind and body, saying that you are the witness consciousness, not this body and mind, then there forms a subtle gap. It may take time to notice, but there exists a subtle gap. The moment you say that I am neither the body nor the mind, during the troubles that you face, there forms a subtle gap. So this gap makes you feel that you are just the observer or the subject. That is quite different from the body-mind, which is the object. So as the subject and object is different, then you are just the knower of your misery or the knower of your peace. And when you say, I am sad or I am happy, the moment you say, I am neither the body nor the mind, you are just the knower of sadness and you are just the knower of happiness. And the moment you say that, the happiness and the sadness both becomes the object of knowledge, and thus they just disappear, because happiness and sadness are just the object which is witnessed by the subject, called the ultimate or witness consciousness. This consciousness does neither rise nor set. It does not increase nor does it suffer decay. Being self-luminous, it illumines everything else without any other aid. And this verse number 5 actually describes the witness consciousness. So what does it mean? Let's say a woman is pregnant, then a fetus is conceived. The fetus exists, right? Then after 9 months and so, the baby is born, which is subjected to birth. And this baby is subjected to various growth and change. It gets older and it achieves success in life, and it has its own family, and it finally gets old and it dies. Decay and destruction. Well, this is the entirety of human race right now. So, the consciousness neither rises. Rises here refers to birth, nor sets, which means it is not subjected to decay. This consciousness neither rises nor sets. If it doesn't rise and doesn't sets, then how is it subjected to growth and change? No, it isn't. It is the same witness consciousness that witnessed your existence from the moment of your birth to the last moment of your death. It is the same witness consciousness that is ever signing and witnessing every achievement that you've accomplished in your life. Growth and decay are only possible for those entities which have parts, but consciousness is without parts. So how can we say that consciousness is without any parts, right? If I tell you to close your eyes right now and just imagine that if you have a chance to imagine a form of this witness consciousness, most of the people, about 99.99% of the people will imagine a circle, right? Why? Because the circle doesn't have any parts. Other forms like square or a triangle or other polygons have parts, but a circle doesn't have a part. So when many people think about the absolute, and even when a mystical people say that imagine a white light between your eyebrows, usually people imagine a circle, and from that circle a white beam of light is being generated outwards. Most of the people see this as the consciousness. Thus it is the absolute seer. Why it is the absolute seer? Because it witnesses every growth and change from the moment you were born to the moment you die. It just continuously shines. So, what is the summary that we can take from this episode? We had 3 seers. One was physical body. Your eyes see the universe. Your eyes is the seer, the subject, while the universe is seeing the object. Your mind itself is the subject, and your body, your sense organs, becomes the object of knowledge to the mind, because every condition that your sense organs has, be it blindness or deafness, is seen by the same mind. And they are relative seers. And why are they called relative seers actually? Why are they called relative seers? Because they are dependent on the absolute seer, which is seer number 3. And why it is called absolute seer? Because it just illumines without any other aid. It is independent. It just illumines the mind, which in turn illumines the physical body. But itself, it illumines. It is self-luminous. It doesn't need any other aid to be luminous. Thus, it is absolutely absolute seer. So let's explain this figure once again as a summary. The consciousness is self-luminous and is independent. hence is absolute seer. Why is it called absolute? Because it is independent. Why is it independent? Because it is self-luminous. It is the only real subject because it witnesses all the subtle and physical aspects. The consciousness illumines the mind and its modifications. Hence, the mind is dependent on witness consciousness and is a relative seer. The subject number 2. The mind manifests its subtle aspect via the bundle of neurons called the brain. And through these sense organs, through the illumination of these sense organs, it perceives the physical universe. Thus the sense organs, they also are dependent on the mind and the witness consciousness and are the relative seer. Right? So, this is the end of episode number 1. We discussed verse number 1 to 5. So, there may be lots of questions right now in your head. Number 1, how does consciousness illumines the mind? Well, you said, okay, the witness consciousness illumines the mind and the mind illumines the physical sense organs and physical sense organs is the universe. But how does consciousness illumined the mind in the first place, right? Another question you may have, how did the absolute become the relative? Okay, so there's an absolute seer called the witness consciousness, and then there are relative seers called the mind and the body. So how did the absolute become the relative actually? I don't understand that. And the third question you may have is, why don't we feel as witness consciousness? Why do we feel we are just this body and mind complex? Right? So, all of this will be answered on the episode number 2. On how did the consciousness illumine the mind? How did the absolute become the relative? Or why do we feel we are body-mind complex instead of witness consciousness? All will be explained in episode number 2. Thank you for watching.